Today's episode will help you explore creative ways to monetize your podcast, develop grit and confidence in the face of rejection, and begin thinking about succession planning for your business. Danielle Desir Corbett shares how having just one high-ticket affiliate partner allowed her to create spaciousness. That income allowed her to outsource podcast editing and use the time she was spending editing on finding aligned sponsors and refining her pitch. Rather than focusing on getting visible, she says, focus on getting found. Danielle and I see eye to eye on the power of long-term, long-form content over the quick feel-good hits social media gives us. Also, let's not skip past the fact that she just sold a community she built from scratch, women of color podcasters. So y'all start with the end in mind. You could be selling your business, community, or platform one day. Danielle, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to chat with you.
Absolutely. Happy to be here, of course.
Now, I would love to just start with your definition of abundance.
For me, abundance, the first thing that comes to mind is spaciousness. So space in terms of finances is number one, space in terms of time, and really having less worry about the day-to-day, which often comes with time and money, as if I'm honest. I think abundance also, something that comes to mind is worthiness. Like, I think when I was younger, I felt like abundance was for other people and it wasn't necessarily for me because I had to work and grind and saw my family work and grind. So as an adult myself, and I have a family as well, it's unlearning some of those things and saying that, I am worthy of abundance and I can create this spaciousness in my life and in the lives of those I love. So those are the things that come up for me.
Yeah. And those are all very, very beautiful. What did you create intentionally in the business in alignment with some of what you just said?
First, because I have a multifaceted business and I'll kind of break it down for folks. So I have the Thought Card, which is a travel and personal finance website and podcast. So I create content over there. I had Women of Color podcasters, a podcasting community for women of color. And then lastly, I have Grants for Creators, a newsletter where I share funding opportunities. So 3 seemingly different things, but the through line is all money related. Whether you want to save money to travel, you want to find money to pursue your business or make money as a podcaster, for example. I was able to create spaciousness in 2024 by selling women of color podcasters. And that to me opened up a whole new idea of succession planning as a business owner. A lot of times we're so consumed with our business day to day. And even when we're, for example, falling out of love with it, or we know that it's not necessarily still the same passion or in alignment with our lives, like we still keep it going. And we either feel like we have to shut it down or keep going, right? So I intentionally created spaciousness by offering up for sale. And there were a couple of reasons as to like the benefits of that. Number one, of course, like all the hard work that I put into building this community, but also allowing for that community to have a legacy and continue on. So I think succession planning is one of those ways to create spaciousness in our lives, and especially as business owners. And it can be hard for us to even conceptualize. But I think that this is a trend where a lot of creators are thinking like, hey, I could shut it down or I could sell it, Another way that I created spaciousness in my business is by creating digital products. So over the last 5-6 years, I've created systems and workflows for myself. And I'm able to now package them up and offer them to those who are interested, whether that's in the podcasting side or in my travel and personal finance side. That has been really important to me because I really want to unlock time for money work, meaning I don't necessarily want to clock in and clock out and have my income be directly related to the hours I put in. So creating digital products really allows me to like break free of that. And one of the products, for example, is our annual podcast planner. And that it's exciting because every year I get to add on to my existing product. And every year I get to remarket it and produce it and show it in a different way. So those are two ways. And then lastly, I'll say that hiring a podcast editor has been life changing. And as a podcaster who was making no money with a small audience, it felt like a big deal. And I really wanted to generate income with my show first before I actually started investing that way. But the benefits of an editor I've found is that it frees up your time and the quality of my show is so much better. Like there's a clear difference between the thought card, like 2018 and the thought card 2024, not only in terms of me as a creator and as a content, as my content, but also like the skills that my editor brings to the table. It's invaluable. It is invaluable. So I think overall, succession planning, if you're at that level, outsourcing and creating digital products that allow you to package your knowledge and sell it on repeat without you actually not having to be there and involved in that transaction.
That's awesome. And I think each of these, it's like you can baby step even these three things that you said. Maybe creating the systems and workflows and the digital products is like an earlier step that somebody can take right away in their business. Succession planning sounds like this big, scary endeavor that only a certain quadrant of people are allowed to talk about or something like that. And then, yes, the whole income versus editor. And I hope you're speaking my language, of course.
Yes.
It is hard to decide when and how and what to outsource. But of course, this is what I do. So I'm actually 100% on your page. How did you shift from feeling like, okay, my show isn't making any money. How could I afford to hire an editor? And then, of course, you hire an editor and they free up your time. So then how did you shift and say, okay, well, now I have this free time. I need to make money with this free time to pay for this editor. What was that thought process like?
Yeah. So I first thought about my income streams as a podcaster, and podcasters have infinite amounts of opportunities to make income, even though we only typically think of just sponsorships, but it's not true. You have affiliates, you have digital products, you have consultation calls, you have I said digital products already, you have private podcasts, you have summits, you have so many. I tried a lot. So I experimented and I was okay with things not working out. Because if I try something and it not works out, that means I'm just kind of going through the list and trying to figure out what's for me. And once I stumbled upon affiliate income, that felt really in alignment, where I am mentioning a product that I love and trust and use on my show, and I'm making income, passive income, right? And I actually had a high ticket affiliate where I was actually making thousands of dollars per sale. And I would actually recommend that. So look for an affiliate opportunity where you're making a lot of money, so high ticket, or you are making recurring income as an affiliate, meaning that every month you're making an income as long as they're still subscribed. So typically this is for SaaS companies, tech companies. They typically have a recurring model where you'll get money as long as they get money, right? So with that model, I made like one sale a month through my podcast, and I was able to instantly be able to hire an editor. So that was very, very powerful for me. And with that free time, I decided that I actually wanted to go for sponsorships. And here's a couple of reasons why I decided podcast sponsorships. One, I don't enjoy asking my audience for money. Like, I don't want them to buy me a coffee. If you do, thank you. But I don't like asking for it. I don't like asking for the sale on my podcast. I really wanted my podcast to be a place where I can show up and share, and you love me for it, and then we walk away. That's really what I wanted. And I felt like sponsorships could be that for me. Behind the scenes, I was a blogger first before I became a podcaster. So I already knew that there were lots of tourism boards and attractions that were hiring creators to create content on the blogger side. But for the podcasting side, I really struggled. Like, I just didn't understand how to showcase my value, how to advocate for myself, how to build relationships with brands. So I hired a coach. I hired a podcast monetization coach, which was costly. It was costly. But I went to that coaching program with the intention of learning how to fish. I wanted to learn how to fish for my own brand deals. And I was able to, after that coaching program, I literally, like, within that time, I got my first brand deal for my podcast. So I didn't make the entire ROI, but I made something back, right? And that was like proof of concept. So I feel that spaciousness allowed me to think strategically, experiment, and also invest in areas that I really needed the support. I honestly feel like today, based off what I see in the market right now, I don't think I would have been able to successfully obtain brand deals through a course or through like an ebook. Like, I needed that one-on-one support to guide me through the process. And since then, now sponsorships is 40% of my income as a business owner, which is quite significant. It's like significant, right? So those are just some of the things that come to mind for me.
Have you ever pictured yourself having your own show? Maybe it's time. This show is edited and produced by podcastabundance.com. And if you like what we're doing, we can do it for your business too. I'm Virginia Elder, and I've been helping entrepreneurs start podcasts to market their business since 2019. I coach you through branding, structuring your episodes, workflow, and recording your podcast. Then my team and I professionally edit your audio and video so that you don't have to. We'll even write your episode descriptions and titles so that when potential customers turn to Google, your show appears in their search results. Establish authority in your niche, expand your reach, and create a library of helpful content for potential and current clients, all with your own podcast. I'm here to hold your hand and make podcasting the exciting, up-leveling experience it should be, skirting you past the tech and software struggles too. Take the first step by booking a call with me using the link in the show notes or by visiting podcastabundance.com. Now, on to the rest of the show. I agree with you. I think most people say, well, I need to monetize my podcast. And most of my client base is already a business owner and has a podcast to market their business, right? So then when we start talking about monetizing your podcast, their brain immediately goes to sponsorships. And I'm like, well, hold on. You have this entire business with offers, whether they are full service offers, done for you offers, whatever it is. And then, we need to dig in and look at things and say, do you have a digital product? Do you have a freebie that they can download just to get on your email list? Like, we start to do this, like, back it up a little bit and dive into what the pieces are and say, is acquiring sponsorships aligned with your business and your brand? Is that something that you feel comfortable? Because then you're selling someone else's thing on your show. So if that aligns, like in your case, you're in travel. So if you're getting travel-based sponsors, that makes sense. And it actually helps make the travel experience better, more fun, easier, whatever it is. But for some business, say they're a financial advisor, that's not really going to work. So we have to really dig in and say, maybe there's a high-ticket affiliate, or Maybe it's our own services. Maybe we create a smaller entry-level offer so that we can build someone up to the point where they're ready to actually have their investments with us. It is so important to really look at the point of why you're running this business and what this business does when you start to look at monetization. I think that's a key that a lot of people are missing in this space. And you mentioned
Absolutely.
now you have 40% of your income is sponsorships. I know that it didn't start that way. I know you said you started small. Can you share with us the timeline or kind of like what that looked like for you as far as getting more and more sponsorships and shifting your income further in that direction?
Yeah, so I believe I started with my coach in 2021. It was during the pandemic, I remember. And by the time I would say 2022 came around, I was already inching towards 40%. So over the last 2 years, I've been maybe like 30, 35, 40, so 45. So every year I'm adding a bit more, but I'm also more strategic with like, I have it down to a science now. So I'm typically now doing less campaigns, but I'm charging higher because of the quality of my show, the depth of the storytelling, the requirements that's needed for each campaign. So that I think is also important. I think a lot of times when it comes to sponsorships, we're like, I must have 20 sponsorships to fulfill my quota. You may just need two, or you may be able to negotiate one, and that be okay. So it's something that I was able to really build quickly. But in the travel space, we are just now at the point where tourism boards and attractions are interested in podcasting. When I say interested, meaning that they are considering talking to you. So this is in an industry that has been traditionally harder to tap into. So I can only imagine as things get easier, as podcasting continues to be attractive to these brands, there's just more opportunity. Like there's just more opportunity to grow. But behind the scenes, let's talk about like how much work it is. I am pitching. I am hopping on meetings. I am crafting stories. I'm scripting. I'm recording episodes, sending invoices. I am hearing no's, no thank yous, getting rejected. Like there's a lot behind the scenes that I signed up for, right? But again, this allows me to not have to ask my audience to invest with me in certain ways. However, I think as things continue to shift, of course, we have to look at the economy and certain things like that. I am going to experiment again and see, okay, now that I'm more strategic, I know what I'm doing. I know I'm doing it a little bit better. If I offer something like a planner or something like that to my audience, what is that going to look like? But also not having this, like, it has to work or it has to generate something for me. I think a lot of business is experimenting, not being emotionally attached to what you're creating. And you just put things out there. And then as you put things out there, you're like, oh, didn't work, take it in the back. Oh, this worked, let's keep going. Add the fire, So I'm open to change. I'm open to pivot. But I also don't want to do too much too. Like I want to do less, especially as a family. Like I have a young family. Yes. It's like, you kind of have to pick and choose what you want to do and what kind of phase of life you're in as well.
Yeah. And I've been through that as well. There was a period of time where I offered social media management and had clients asking for that. And that was on my website in addition to the podcast editing and management. And for a while, I didn't have any social media clients. And so I actually took it down and then people started asking for that again. I'm like, oh, I guess this is back, So it's like being flexible as far as your offers. Of course, my pricing changed over that period. I think that's an integral piece of being a business owner is that flexibility. And I almost want to say like rolling with the punches, but that sounds bad. It's just like we're not getting punched here, but it's just, there are ebbs and flows in the industry, in the business, in the world that we have to be able to adjust for and not be too sore about it and not be frustrated when it doesn't work. So I love this curious, experimental approach that you bring to the table. It kind of just makes when something doesn't work, it makes it feel a little bit less like an absolute fail or something that you should be ashamed of. And just knowing that, if anybody goes to check out your site or your show or any of your things that you have going on, they're going to think like, oh, Danielle is like, got this, look at the, but if she's even having to dip and dodge here and there, I don't feel so bad about what I'm going through behind the scenes. And the other piece that you brought up is you said, I signed up for this because I didn't want to do XYZ. I signed up for this. And this is what it looks like behind the scenes. I think so often we look at a creator or what we would consider a big business owner that we're looking up to, and we think, oh, they're doing this. And we don't realize the intensity of what we're signing up for, the massive task list that comes with being able to make an offer like that or have a website like that. So how did you take a step back and kind of design the back end processes so that you knew what you were signing up for? Did you do research on it? Did you ask someone? Did you have other business owners in your network that were advising you, hey, this is all the work. Are you willing to do this?
I think I didn't. It's kind of funny. Like I didn't have an official resource, because I think, especially in the world of sponsorships or podcasters, like a lot of folks are talking about the CPM model, which is like cost per mil, where they get $25 per 1,000 listens. And as a smaller creator, I had no interest in that. So I really had to really experiment and take a step in a different direction, which is flat fee. But I also had to speak the language of my client, because I really think of my sponsors as my clients. I have actually 3 clients. Myself, I'm client number 1, and my son and my family. So we're client number 1. So make sure I'm fulfilled. Client 2 is my podcast listeners. So I'm beholden to them. I want to serve them. And then client number 3 is my podcast sponsors in this example. So I have 3 clients that I have to balance and make sure that we're all in equilibrium. So a lot of times, especially in the beginning, I would put something together and then I would assess how I felt. Did I feel like this was a lot of work for peanuts? I raise my rates, right? Or did I feel like I really oversold the sponsor, which may be a turnoff to my listeners. So I need to dial that back in and work on my storytelling, right? Or maybe I was off in alignment where it's like, I didn't necessarily was interested in this sponsor anyway. You know what I mean? So I have to really, I think in this world, I just had to experiment and assess how each campaign went, assess how each project went, and ask for feedback too. On the client side, for example, on the sponsor side, they would tell me things like, hey, can you let me know what this is or that is? I would go back and fix my email so that it incorporated their feedback. So I took a lot of things as like reiteration to get to the point where I can show a complete package today at this point. So those are some of the things that I took into account. And I also had to have really tough skin. And sometimes I still tear up a little bit when I get a rejection. But again, these are your clients. It's not like it is a sponsor, but if you think of them as your true clients, this can be a coaching client. This can be a sponsor client. This can be a consulting client. This can be, if you're a service provider, these are all clients, right? And I think once I decided to call them what they were, I approached it differently. I approached it how do I serve my client, which was very helpful in terms of processing it back. Today, as a podcast coach, podcast marketing coach, this is what I actually help my clients do, because I had to learn all of these things. I had to get a lot of rejections. I had to get into a lot of meetings. I had to put myself out there and do all these reiterations, which is what I think a coach can really help folks do, is skip a lot of those pitfalls that it took years for them to learn that you can now hit the ground running. And it's very similar to like how I hired my coach. I hired my coach to learn how to fish, right? So I became a fisherwoman, but then I wanted to go after this specific type of fish. So I had to go off and learn that on my own. So I think that's the power of coaching, is that it allows you to get to a foundation layer, and then now you can now climb and build off of that to tailor your business. Last thing I want to say here is that I feel like a lot of times we want to put on someone else's business on ours. Like it's like a dress, we're trying it on, or an outfit. And it's like, it's not always going to fit perfectly. You're going to have to tailor, put put pins on it, sew things in, tighten it up, loosen this area, right? These are all things that we're always looking for, like a done for you or like one size fits all. And it's not always like that. We can take foundations and now customize it to our liking.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's an important point, because even as a podcast agency owner, I'm in a mastermind with other podcast agency owners. None of our businesses look the same or operate the same. And we all do the same thing. So that is super important to recognize, that any one of us could be trying on the dress and it not fit. My business is designed a certain way to support me, my idea of abundance, my family, things that you highlighted of how you created your business. And every other agency owner did the same thing. That's why our businesses look different, because we have different goals, different family structures, different ideas of what works for us. So that's the power of this show, is like hearing how and why everyone's business is so different. And there could be other travel podcasters out there. There could be other podcast marketing coaches out there. Their businesses are going to look different because you've specifically designed yours to create your own feelings of abundance in your life. So you mentioned the podcast marketing coaching. Talk to me about that, when you shifted into that and how you knew that that was the direction for you.
Yes. So before I started coaching, I had a community called Women of Color Podcasters. It's still active, but I'm no longer the CEO of that community. And I enjoyed the one-on-one connections I was making with my members, and I love that. However, I think the issue with a membership is that we would meet, they would go off and live their lives, and I would maybe connect with them 6 months later, maybe a year later. Like I couldn't help them close the loop or help them truly achieve their goal. So I decided to branch out and consider one-on-one coaching and really put to work some of my frameworks and my thought processes and my marketing strategies that were helping me. A couple things I feel like for me are strengths is not relying on social media, which is actually becoming a very hot topic today, where people are getting tired, exhausted. And I really leaned in on one, podcast search optimization, which finally has a word. Like there's an actual word to define what I was talking about now. So it's called podcast search optimization, SEO, and really focusing in on getting found. So I think a lot of times podcasters are working on their visibility. I'm posting to Reels. I am sharing things on social media because I want to be visible. But the visibility isn't translating into actual listeners because you are actually not answering or solving problems at that level. However, if you shift your focus and you're like, I want to work on my getting found, getting discovered, meaning that when people are typing something in the search box, I want to pop up. I want to pop up for, hey, I need help with budgeting for my vacation. Hey, I need help with starting a budget. Hey, I need help with a travel fund. I want to be the solution to their problem, but I have to show up where they're at, which is on Google. So that really allowed me to really shift my focus and focus on, okay, search engine optimization, creating show notes, working on getting found, working on getting discovered. And that actually frees up your time where you don't have to post a reel unless you really want to, right? Like that is, to me, lights me up so much. And a lot of my coaching clients are surprised. They're like, I'm not doing all these things. I feel unproductive. I'm like, no, you're actually on par. Like you can do less if you're, again, being the answer to the problem that they have and using those levers. So that's really the start of my coaching program, and trying to figure out, okay, how do we answer this marketing question for podcasters? Because podcast growth is very difficult. We are literally like islands, and we are trying to wave people to our islands with no raft boats and no kayaks. And a lot of time we're wasting a lot of time, energy, and pod fade is very real when you realize that you're putting so much effort into your craft and you're not getting listens. Whatever your show was supposed to do for you is not happening. So these are kind of the problems that I'm solving with my coaching program, and that one-on-one, like working together with someone for 6 months, there's results. We can pivot, we could check, and we could like try different things to get them those results. So it's definitely a big passion of mine for sure.
Thank you. That's amazing. I feel like we're aligned in that often I am preaching, I feel, that people should be focused more on long-term content that lives for a long period of time. We're talking blogs, YouTube, podcasts as well, because all of these things, especially the power of YouTube, and Google owns YouTube, and then you've got your website, working your SEO there. Like all of these things can be found, right? When someone's typing in, travel budget hacks or whatever, I bet your stuff pops up on the front page. And so if all of us could just think about that for our business, what are people typing in? This is the foundation of SEO. What questions are people asking? What are people typing into Google that they're searching for an answer to their problem? And does any of my long-term content, so again, blogs, YouTube, podcasts, any of these published works pop up in response to their question? Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, none of these things work that way unless they are in the platform specifically searching for a hashtag or something like that. That's not how people use those platforms. So that's kind of my quick little snippet there, but yes, we are so aligned in that space. What would you say as far as, sure, someone who's starting a new show, they can start with all the SEO in mind, get great titles and descriptions, and make sure your keywords are in the descriptions, and they can do a really good job launching with that mindset. What about someone who already has 100 episodes out there? Should they be going back and fixing SEO retroactively, or should the focus be more forward? What would you say to that?
So the riches are in your archive. That's the power of the longevity of podcasting, is if you have 50, 75, 100 plus episodes, you can do small tweaks to boost your discoverability and get found. And I would absolutely go back and take a look and audit your current titles, audit your current show notes. These are all things that you can do to optimize what you already have, versus we also want to create new content, but it's very easy to optimize than to create new content. So to make that even more realistic, I would actually start with your top 3. So look at your top 3 most downloaded episodes and ask yourself, does this need tweaking? Is there anything that I can do to improve upon what is already performing really well? Then you branch out to top 5, top 10, and you go through the list. Fun fact, for example, a lot of podcasters have this template version of show notes that are super flimsy, and we spend time creating them, but it actually doesn't create any ROI for us. I did that for years until I figured out the system. And my system is really a blog post style show notes. So it's elongated, looks very similar to a blog post, but has all the bells and whistles of a podcast. With that, I've actually removed pages from my website. I've removed a lot of the things that I feel like this is not adding to my portfolio. My website is my portfolio. It's not adding, it's not getting any attention, it's not helping. So let me remove things. And I try once a year to look at my body of work and say, hey, episodes from 2018, is there any tweaks I can make? Like just on the title alone. And I've seen multiple times where you update your title and that can cause a spike in your downloads by simply just refreshing your title. Because now you have maybe a different keyword or you're a little bit more clear. So definitely take the time to look back as you're looking forward, for sure.
Absolutely. So in hearing you now on the mic, and I know your show is popping, you've got all of these amazing things happening. Can you give us a peek behind the scenes of what you felt or kind of headspace or feelings of worthiness or abundance as far as like when you started, and talk to us about that journey to where you are now? Because personally, being behind the mic makes you develop your confidence, of course, the way you speak so that you're saying less ums and things like that. But it's a personal development journey. That's just what it is. You end up looking at yourself deeply, hearing your words over and over and thinking about how you're speaking about your business or your stories. Share a little bit about that journey with us.
Yes. The first time I hopped on the microphone as a host, I was so self-conscious that I needed a script to read out loud. And there's no shame in that. And I listened to my episode, that first episode, and I'm pretty proud of it. Like 5 years. I'm like, this is actually pretty good. I did pretty good. It's not that cringe. But there were definitely areas of doubt of course, like, does my voice sound okay? Is my content going to land? I'm also in this very tight corner of travel and personal finance, which isn't for everyone. I am very super niche. I've got niche and niched again because it's intersection of travel and money. So these are financially savvy travelers. So I remember before launching my show, I asked my current established audience on Instagram if they would listen to me if I had a podcast. 70% of people said no. So I had massive amounts of negative self-talk and external non-validation that this wasn't going to work out. But I kept pushing through it because I had a goal for my show. I wanted my show to help me build authority. I wanted to build a name for myself and create a space for travel and personal finance with the Thought Card podcast. So that was the kind of the world I was living in the beginning. Fast forward to today, I am very clear on who I am and what I provide. I've grown immensely as a storyteller. I've never considered myself a storyteller before. I'm black and white. Like this is gray. This is gray. Like I'm not a, wordy person. I'm not a wordsmither, but over especially the last 2 years, I've been really pushing myself to be a storyteller and like create these immersive experiences for my listeners as I travel. So I think podcasting opens doors of opportunity for you, and you'll develop skills that you never had an interest in and never thought you would actually master. But I'm working on it now, and I feel self-taught, to be honest. Like I'm thinking about like, oh, well, how would this sound versus this sound? And I'm creating these as a result. I'm also really proud of the fact that I've stuck with this for close to 6 years. I've seen so many folks start, pause, start, stop, start, end. And podcasting is an immense amount of work, especially if you're pulling the levers that we talked about, like your show notes and titles, you're actually duplicating the content. You're right. You have your podcast episode, you have a blog post with that podcast episode. You're on Pinterest, you're doing all these things, right? So it's an immense amount of work. But man, when you are at the top of that summit and you're looking back and you're like, if I didn't do this, I wouldn't have this. If I didn't do this, I would not be here. So I'm so proud and I'm happy I have the foresight that I created something that is working for me every day of the year. It wasn't exactly what I imagined. Like I just had a very narrow view of what podcasting could offer me, but it's literally changed my life. It's literally allowed me to go full time as a creative entrepreneur. It literally pays 40% of my bills. Like it's crazy to think about. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love just watching you because I can see how you're thinking about your journey as you're answering. And I love just watching the facial expressions and seeing that thought process. So thank you very much for sharing. Something that struck me was you asked friends, family, everybody on Facebook, and 70% of people said they would not listen. Ouch. How did you continue to pursue? Because I think so many people would go, oh, well, this is clearly a bad idea. I'm not going to do this. Trash that idea. So what made you push forward and think, no, I'm still going to pursue this? Did you shift the take on the show a little bit? Did you think like, oh my gosh, I'm too niched down? There's so many questions there.
Yeah. So I was definitely deflated when I got that response back. But I had this internal conviction that I'm like, I've been thinking about podcasting for 2 years prior to even launching my show. It comes up every time I listen to someone else's show. I think about podcasting all the time. I wonder what if, like, this is a recurring thought that comes up over and over and over again. That was one thing. Another thing was like, well, then I need to go find people who want to listen. Like, just because you currently, like my current fan base does not want to listen to this show doesn't mean that I cannot create community elsewhere, right? And I'm telling you, the people who said they're not interested know me today as a podcaster. They refer to me as a podcaster. They listen to my podcast, right? So I know it's hard to get rejections and to have people not necessarily be on board with your ideas. But if you have that conviction, you try. And if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't work out, it's okay as well. But definitely it was tough. It was a tough pill to swallow. But again, I'm just grateful that I pushed through. I'm grateful that I gave it a try.
Did you face any of the same feelings or experiences as you created this podcast network and then turn around and sold it? So when you're initially looking at what do I do with this and you potentially try to sell this thing, did you get a lot of no's? Did you like have some of the similar experience?
Funny enough, I was just thinking about shutting it down at the onset. I was like, I'm just going to shut it down because it's just not in alignment for me right now. And I actually talked to my friends in the travel creator community, and they were like, why don't you just mention it to your members? Tell them, being vulnerable and honest, which I am most of the time, very honest. And I tell them, here's what I'm thinking about. And by the end of the year, we're either going to shut down or we will get acquired. And my gosh, that engagement on that post, it went fire in the community. And not the fire as in like, oh my gosh, panic, let me get out of here. It was more of like, Danielle, I want to take on what you've built. Yeah. Like, I see a vision for this. So I think in 2 weeks, I met with like 7 community members who had interest in acquiring us. And I would have never thought about that if I didn't just talk to my friends and my network about like what I'm struggling with and the solutions. And today I love that a community member who's been with me for the last like 5 years has stepped up and is now CEO and running that and going to surpass all the things I was able to do, which I love. I absolutely love that. So there was a lot of, I think the differences between starting a podcast and selling was I was at the point of giving up. Like I was literally wanting to close down. And I was so kind of like narrow-minded that what's beyond this? Or is anyone really going to care to purchase this? Or, or just being deflated that the thing I've built for 5 years is going to just disintegrate, right?
Well, especially women of color podcasters. I mean, that's just really important right now that we help people band together and create these supportive communities. So even I, as not a woman of color, would have been a little bit heartbroken to see something like that disappear. Like I'm kind of getting like, whoo, like I would be upset, because that's just, I feel like those communities are so important right now for the movement that we're all trying to help create. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm happy that I tapped into my network, had conversations, and shared my thought process with my community, which allowed people to like step up. I think sometimes as business owners, we are afraid of being vulnerable and letting our folks know like, hey, I'm really struggling with this, or hey, I don't think I can do this as much. And you'll be surprised by how many of your community members will band together and continue what you started.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I'm so glad that you asked and got the community involved there. And maybe it's not always the community. Like if someone else is experiencing some kind of similar situation, maybe it's not the community, but maybe it's fellow business owners that would get passionate about it, or who have been watching you and believe in the vision and would understand that, hey, you've taken it this far, you're kind of tired, ready to move on to something else. But like you said, the gal that took over saw the vision and is taking it even higher.
Leaps and bounds.
Yes.
Exactly.
Super exciting there. Oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
Can you, before we go, share with us a little bit about what it took to prepare a community for sale? Like, how do you do that?
Absolutely. So I started off with that post that let them know, hey, here are 2 options of what we're considering to do. I also let them know every step of the process where things are, meaning that we're in conversations. I have someone who's interested. Sit tight. We're not closing down. Sit tight. I have hopeful news. I can't share all the details right now, but sit tight. So open communication with my community members was very critical and very important. And also action steps afterwards. So we are doing things like town hall, meaning that we're allowing all of our community members to come and they'll be sharing their new vision. I will be there supporting them in this transitionary period. And the community members get to talk about what they're looking to achieve, what they're hoping to accomplish, things that they love about the community. So having these like places where we can all talk, and me being supportive too. I think if I just left and never showed up again, it definitely puts the new creators, the new CEOs at a disadvantage because they don't have like all this, everything I've built, right? They don't have my assistance with that. So creating a transitionary period where as a CEO, as a founder, you were involved in helping your successors be successful, I think is very, very, very important. Also, documentation. So documenting your processes, having records of what you do, how you do it, your past clients, your future clients, like all these things. Like I really want my successor to be successful. So just thinking about what do they need? Asking them, hey, what do you need? Right? These are all things I think that just help everyone to be able to move smoothly in the right direction.
Awesome. And then tell us where we can find you, where we can follow you, and what you're doing now. Okay, you sold this. This is great. Congratulations. That is huge. But then now what?
I really definitely want to do less. I want to do less. I want to retire at the age of 40 also. So working towards that goal. But in terms of what's next and what I'm focusing in on, it's definitely my one-on-one coaching. Podcast marketing coaching is my primary focus, helping folks grow their downloads, helping folks really get discovered and get found is my jam. And it's where I'm focusing in on. I know during this conversation, we talked specifically about sponsorships. So if anyone is interested, I have a podcast media kit checklist that will walk you through the 20 plus items that I recommend to have in your podcast media kit. And guess what? These are all things that I had to learn the hard way. So a lot of rejections, a lot of delays because I didn't have certain things on my media kit. So you could grab that over at DanielleDesir.com media-kit. So DanielleDesir.com/media kit. That is going to be my main focus. And if you like travel and personal finance and that is your jam, whether you want to save money, travel hack, or just literally get your money in a place where you can live your life, then the Thought Card podcast is a great place to connect with me. I have over 170 episodes, so tons of content to enjoy and binge over the last almost 6 years.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. And I see us as this amazing pair because I can speak a little bit to the SEO and some marketing, but my main focus is making the audio and video look and sound amazing. And then sure, there's social media pieces. We could pull reels. We could do all these things, but the marketing of the show is not my expertise. So I'm going to say, use both of us. I think it's a perfect pairing. And I'm really, really excited for where you're going. And even if that means working less, doing less, retiring early, that's just such a huge goal and huge accomplishment. I'm super excited for you. So thank you so, so much for being here today.
Thank you, Virginia. This was, of course, a pleasure. It's great connecting with you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Danielle.